My name is Christian King, and I'm from America. I'm from San Francisco, and I have quite a bit of experience with farming. My specialty is algae energy farming. I'm a vegan raw foodist from America, and I've studied permaculture, and I've been in India for 7 years, and there's a lot of things that are very good about Indian farming. The fact that Indian farming has stayed within the family. In America, we've seen the agricultural businesses take over farming. And to just give a brief history of that, this is related to the war, this is related to explosives industries making fertilizer and bombs and taking over agriculture and taking over pharmaceuticals and taking over seed companies. And really agriculture is the center of society. I mean, because everybody goes to work and they work for money, but the only reason they work for money is to go out and buy food, and if you can't buy food, then the whole economy fails. And so, India is an incredible country because despite the fact that, people don't have Macintosh computers and, there's a relatively high illiteracy rate, the people are much more politically savvy than everywhere else in the world. And when Monsanto and these various agricultural businesses came in to India to try to take over the means of production, the Indian farmers went and they burnt themselves to death. 300,000 farmers went and burnt themselves to death. And the people of India should be very proud of that, because if you compare India to China, 90% of the water supply is contaminated in China, and their food is collapsing, and they're going to starve to death very, very soon. As where in India, the land is still productive, you still have good food, and your children will still be fed. And that's something to be proud of. In many respects, my advice to Indian farmers would be to continue to do what they're doing, which is to resist corporate pressure and to continue to grow food in their traditional ways. But my criticism of it would be that trying to use the cow to produce the fertilizer and burning up the leaves. I think it's really critical to compost the organic matter and to take the leaves and to put that back on the soil so that the worms in the soil can come and eat that and replenish the soil. And that's where you'll get higher productivity rates. You can see the Chinese do get 5 times as much rice for half as much water than the Indians. And a part of the reason for that is that they take their poop and they recycle it back. They have a lot of recycling. When you go to India and you see them burning the organic matter, burning, particularly with the plastic, that's what's destroying your agricultural productivity, because it's the organic matter in the soil that feeds the life, that causes the disease resistance, that allows, so you don't have to use pesticides. It's what allows the soil to hold the water so that you can handle droughts, and it's what allows the plants to be productive. So when you destroy the fact that, the way that the leaves and the organic matter falls on the soil, that destroys it. It's best to get like a composting mower and compost it so that you have a layer of organic matter that decomposes naturally and shields the soil from the sun, the way it is in nature. And my other thing is that we live in a very, very polluted world, and we live in a very overpopulated world. And that means that we can't afford to eat meat, and we can't really afford to eat dairy. And it should be mentioned that eating dairy is the same as eating meat, because it produces a male calf, and that male calf has to be killed one way or another. And it's not just a matter of that, of whether there's enough food to feed everybody, but the fact that the radiation and the heavy metals and the plastics and the dioxins are going to get concentrated in the dairy, and they're going to get concentrated in the meat. And so it's a matter of survival. And I mean, to be honest, people aren't really looking at the science, but the science indicates that we'll all be dead in 2 to 10 years with global warming. Because of the atmospheric rise in carbon dioxide and methane levels. So That's a realistic number. I mean, people, we have this fantasy that we can all have children, that we're going to have a future, and that our children are going to have children. But no, we're in an end game at this point in time, and agriculture is a very big deal in this end game because, frankly, if we all switched to a vegan diet, we would be able to reverse. We might not be able to reverse global warming anymore. We could have done it two years ago. We'll see how it goes down, but still, I'd say I'm very proud of Indian farmers. I go across the country in a train, and I see numerous people out there, with their piles of cow patties and their pastures with the trees around it, using very good natural growth. And the Indian farmers, the people of India, should be proud in that they were not easily manipulated by corporations and corrupt people in their government, that they had enough common sense to stick to the land. The difference is that the family farm has been broken in America. It's not just ubiquitous, it's not just America, it's in Europe and everywhere, but America is really a big deal. America's an interesting country because when you study it, really, before the white man came, the Native Americans were all vegan, and everybody has this view, this mystical, romantic view that the Native Americans were all off killing buffalo and eating animals to survive, and that's just not true. Actually, anybody who knows anything about survival would immediately go to a vegan diet. The Native Americans, the way that they would walk along the land and they would plant seeds wherever they went, and they would have a cycle so that when they came back, there would be all these mushrooms and fruit trees and acorns, and they made their houses out of plants, and they made their clothing out of plants. And the white man came with their ways, which were not holistic to the nature, and even they were doing all right. They were doing all right, but really what happened was European bankers, mainly the Rothschilds, really wanted to take over the world, to actually put their religious prerogative on the world. It was how does a small religious minority take over the world. And the history is that actually a man had found a way of taking coal dust, and he learned how to make dye, and he learned how to make blue jean dyes, and then they started to learn how to make fertilizers. They learned that the plants needed elements for fertilizers, and so the dye companies went into fertilizers, and then Fritz Haber, a German Jew, invented a way of burning oil to create nitrogen, ammonia, and it wound up that was both an explosive and a fertilizer. And so the fertilizer dye seed companies went into explosives production, and that was around 1870 to 1890. And so and then they started to learn how to make poison gases. So this is all how you take coal and turn it into poison gas and fertilizer. And so he killed a lot of people in World War I when they started to go into chlorine gas production. And after World War I, there was a global explosives consortium. So it didn't matter really where war was or who won a loss, because the corporations, Dow, Syngenta, Bayer, Monsanto, these people, they would make money because these were transnational corporations. And so actually World War I and World War II probably were rigged because they could make so much money. And so they stopped using, it was outlawed for them to use these poisons as for war, so instead they sent the poisons into agriculture and they started to poison the land. And then you see Monsanto do things like Agent Orange and stuff. And these people, because they had the ability, they controlled the Federal Reserve, they controlled the money supply and the ability to print money, and they could print money out of nowhere, they were able to take over the land. They were able to take over real estate corporations and buy out farmers, and they were able to put in monopolistic agricultural techniques with monocultural crops, where they would just have, nowadays, frankly, a robotic satellite-guided tractor come in and spray one crop and one seed. And that's doomed America. America is doomed. I mean, honestly, this year, with global warming and it didn't rain in California for 5 years, and then all the trees in the forest were dead, and it rained this year, but that didn't help, and they all caught on fire. California's agriculture is out. That's 50%. California is 1/3 of the agriculture in America, and it's ridiculous. You're in India, you eat California almonds. 80% of the almond supply. The north, it's not raining in the north. The grain is out. Half of Florida got knocked out. There's no fruit. They're going to want to get the fruit from South America. They're going to go down there, and South America cannot give it. They've already deforested 52% of the Amazon rainforest. So America's going to experience over 50% of its agriculture is going to fail this year. And once again, doesn't matter if you work and you make money, if there's no food to buy, the government will collapse. Within 1 or 2 years, the government will collapse in America. America will probably break out in anarchy because these people have no survival skills. And that's what's different between India. In India, people can go and grow their own food. And if conditions get hard, they'll kind of suffer a little bit, but they'll suffer a little bit. In America, if there's no food at the supermarket, these people don't know what to do. They're going to go up and pick guns up. They think that they're going to go off and they're going to shoot animals. They think that that's what's going to save their lives. They think that being able to, they don't have any common sense, and they're going to die is what's going to happen. Watch it, 2 years, 2020, see who's alive after that. And Americans, the whole culture is very violent because they eat a lot of meat and they don't realize, that their entire agricultural system is based upon war. It's based upon explosives. It's based upon torturing animals. People don't look at what's going on. I'm not into eating dairy. Dairy is also a violent thing, but in India, because they don't directly eat violent things, the people aren't vehemently violent like they are in America. So you have a certain kind of peace that will sustain you. So these are a lot of the big differences. But I will say that a raw vegan diet is an even more powerful diet, is a more efficient diet. And that's what I'm going to do in India, is I'm going to advocate a diet of raw veganism because at 1.3 or 1.1 billion people, the biological pressures of life are going to get so critical that, how do you feed that many people? And to feed that many people, you have to be collecting all of the poop, you have to be collecting all of the waste, and you need to be composting that and recycling it back to the land in order to be able to maintain the soil. You can't just take from the soil and take from it. And even India, everybody's on the line at this point in time. Not many people really mention this. Everybody asks about global warming, and you never hear the truth. You never hear the truth because nobody wants to hear that you're dead. Everybody's dead. Nobody wants to hear that everybody would lose control. How would a government maintain control of people if they all knew that they were dead in three years? Well, the Indians are a very beautiful and loving people. Yeah, and they love me a lot, and they compliment me. They give me everything that I don't have. I'm a very intellectual, worldly person, brilliant, quite audacious, crazy, honestly. And my family was very dysfunctional, and I feel very socially isolated in America. And when I come to India, they're very, very warm and loving, and they take me in and they bombard me with love in ways that I just can't handle. But then again, Indians also have, I see things differently than Indians do. I'm substantially more educated, way more functional. I look at Indian society and, they say they love the mother, but they sell her out to dowry for arranged marriage. They say they love the river, but they throw all the plastic and garbage and dead bodies in the river. They say they love their children, but they send them off to arranged marriage. And these may be very critical views, but there's a certain kind of functionality because I'm not identified with one culture. I don't believe that I'm Indian. I don't believe that I'm American. I don't believe that I'm white or anything like that. I'm on my own. I'm always on my own. I don't have a group that can give me a reference point about who I'm going to be. And so that's a lonely existence, and that's a difficult existence, but it's also existence of responsibility because I have to choose who I am. If I had a culture that could just tell me who I am, that would be easy, but I might believe that certain things are right that are actually wrong. So India gives me love and family and home, and I give India algae sewage treatment plants and triple phase gray water recycling and high-speed electromagnetic levitation trains, and so we have a pretty good deal. And India is a country that you can work with. It's got a lot of potential because of its spiritual foundation. I would love to work with China, but the government is communist, it's vicious, the people are vicious, it's just so cutthroat. I'd love to work with Africa, but it's so violent, India really has a lot of potential, and I would say, politically speaking, when you look at people like the Rothschilds who are in the game for global control, and you see how the Chinese are breaking free of the dollar and the dollar's dominance through International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds are looking at India and they're saying, all right, China's getting free economically. There's another player in the room. We're going to try to get India because India is the Asian super economic powerhouse of the future. India is the super economic powerhouse of the future because it can feed its children, because it has water and it has food. And that's really dangerous because you see somebody like, it doesn't matter if you're the Congress or the BJP, they're both corrupt, but Mukesh Ambani comes in and he says, well, I'm a Hindu, vote for me, I'm a Hindu. And people think that he's a Hindu. He's not a Hindu, that's not how politics works. If you look at Mukesh Ambani, he's got the IMF behind him, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. All right, these are the same people who were behind the British. Why did the British come into India? The British came into India because the Rothschilds wanted to take over their financial system. And in order to do that, they got the British into a lot of wars. The British went off all through Europe and they took over a lot of things. And the Rothschilds created these wars so that the British would have to take loans from their banks. And because the British were in debt to them, the Rothschilds said, now we want exclusive rights to print currency. So they took over the money supply so they could print money, they could expand the money, and they could contract it. They could create poverty and wealth. And that's why the British came into India. They were trying to expand. And so it appears to be that Gandhi kicked the British out, but politics is not what it would seem. In fact, they just bought up somebody like Narendra Modi, or hey, it could be the Congress, the Indian Congress, it doesn't matter. They'll pay both sides. They always pay both sides. And he's just going to come out and say a bunch of religious things to get his votes, but actually he's just selling your country out to the British, and that's the problem with just being like, I'm an Indian and I'm a Hindu. If you just have one perspective, it's easy to get somebody with that perspective, but it's just a lie. He's just a lie, and that's a threat. That's a real threat to India. Because look at what he's doing. He puts in a central bank, and he wants everybody to pay taxes. So it's just a corporatization of India. People shouldn't be paying taxes in India. I'll say to India, Indians, they're a beautiful people, they're a poor people, but they're a rich people spiritually, but they're a poor people. They haven't experienced material wealth. And so when they see America, they see, oh, wow, Porsche, that's pretty cool. Macintosh computer, that's pretty cool. You mean I could have a house in Lake Tahoe or something like that? I want that. That's not going to work for India. What will work for India is something more like Orville. You need to have no money. You need to live in a community where you have rich food, everybody's working in agriculture, you have schools, socialized schools, free housing for people, free hospitals. You don't have to have kids for Social Security because you guys share everything. You don't need money. This corporate thing, this corporate America thing, I go to Orville, it makes American capitalism look stupid. I don't know why people ever bought up such a dupe. The restaurants are way better in Orville, the houses are way better, the people are much better, the education is much better. Money can't buy that. And so, Indians really need to avoid being duped by the supposed luxuries of capitalism. Capitalism will not give you luxuries. Capitalism is not a sustainable system. It's not. When you have somebody like Mukesh Ambani, God, he must be the poorest person in the world. It's this thing, you only have as much as you appreciate, right? You could have everything in the world, but if you don't appreciate it, it seems like you have nothing. Mukesh Ambani is somebody who has an attitude, he doesn't appreciate anything, so he never has enough, so he wants more and more. Look at this guy, he's fat, overweight, he's got like a 50-story mansion in a ghetto. Who does that? And this happened when India went to a free market capitalistic economy. That one fat cat, he's going to kill everybody. You can't have that. Everything has to be shared in India. There's over 1.1 billion people in this country. Everything has to be shared, and you can live a very rich life. Capitalism is a scum. It's a scam. You go to school. Schools are just a system of social indoctrination. You know, most people, the point about school is that most people are going to work a really crappy job in a factory, and then you have some kids who get good grades and they get separated into a managerial class, and they think, oh, I'm a lawyer, I get to make $300,000 a year and I have a Porsche and I'm really, really cool. But they're just managing all the slaves. And you have to have about 3% of the society in on the game to regulate everybody. But then there's just this 3 or 4 people, maybe 2 families up there at the top controlling it. You never see who they are, you know, and that's how it works. That's how capitalism works. It's a scam. Only a few people get a little bit of money, but it's just a bribe for them to sell out their whole society. You know, I see that. You see, I see that. Indians don't see that. I see that because I'm really, really crazy educated. That's why I came to India. I'm the person who brings that knowledge, and you guys love me, and you bring my family and all that. So that's why I love India, and it's something that we need to stand up to, and we need a strategy to stand up to that. And believe it or not, a lot of that strategy looks at the farmers. I mean, you know what they say? They say that there's nothing more democratic than growing your own food. It's true. Why? Because if you grow your own food and you can build your own house, then you don't need money. If you don't need money, then you can tell the government to screw it, you can tell your boss to screw it, you can tell society to screw it. And that's the beauty. India still has it. So the farmers, keep growing your own food, reject corporate subsidies. Remember, anything that has the IMF behind it is a horrible thing. Reject it, they're the enemy. I think India will be the place that will turn the world. I really do. I think that if you can succeed in India, you can succeed anywhere in the world. And I think that if this country flips, it will flip the whole world. So, yeah. Best wishes to JaiKisan TV. Dhanyavad.